Thank you very much, Mr. Manjang. Ian, you know, we get it from Mr. Manjang that, look, positive thinking works, you know, it's important. He also says that, look, you need to set those goals, but conviction, passion is very important. Now, I'd like you to comment on this.
The positive thinking part, I mean, I don't go so much for the books. I've never read a book on, there's a very famous book called The Power of Positive Thinking, which I've never read. But having said that, positivity, being positive is extremely important. And about a month ago, I got sick. I got some kind of virus that wouldn't go away, and I had a cough, and I had to go home and rest in the afternoons. My wife said she'd never seen as much of me, and she was a bit worried about me actually, because here I was home in the afternoons, lying on the bed and stuff. And I got very negative during that time. And I said, what on earth did I ever do this, go into this McKinsey thing for, and I've got so many other pressures and so on and so forth. And I became very, very negative. And then when I recovered from my viral illness, then I picked up again and regained my usual sort of dogged positivity or perseverance or whatever it is. And so I think being positive is extremely important. But I don't know, I couldn't give anybody a lecture as to how you become a positive person. I'm just a fairly positive person, but not in the sense of that I've psyched myself, but just in the sense that I tend to believe that what I've set myself to do is doable. And I think that is something that's very important. We need to believe that whatever goal is we've set, to touch on the second question, I mean, everybody has made resolutions and all that sort of stuff. But if you don't have passion about it and you don't really think it's doable, writing it down, you can write it down as much as you like. It's not going to make any difference. So those two things are linked together. But, I was thinking about, today I spent all day yesterday and all day today, and we were looking at basically strategic plans for next year. And this is an international medical group.
Thank you very much. So positive thinking, ladies and gentlemen, works according to our panelists. Now, as I said, we are going to the next segment of our discussion tonight, and it's going to get personal. We want to know in very clear terms, Mr. Manjang and Dr. Clarke, what are the key things that got you where we are in the context of personal excellence, in the context of personal development? How did you go about it step by step? You look at your CV, it looks good. You look at your achievements, it looks great. What prepared you for this? May I start with Dr. Clarke?
I thought I was going to get wisdom from Lamin for this question. Yeah, well, I think there are some things that are critically important, and I scribbled down a couple of things. I've already mentioned focus, but along with focus is this determination. I know people. Lamin mentioned it. You've got people who are dreamers. They've got a nice idea, a nice dream, but they're not going to achieve it, without that dogged perseverance. And I think in my own personal journey, there has been a lot of perseverance. I mean, developing my organization has taken 15 years. That's a long time. There were different cycles and different phases in that development, which I just had to persevere through. Initially when I started a clinic, which is still their International Medical Center, I was my own product. I was my own service. I was there, I was the guy, the doctor that people came to see. If I had been impatient and wanted to run off and, I don't know, make some money quicker or not be there, I wouldn't have had a practice. I had to be there to see my patients, and it took a lot of just perseverance and being there and being a good doctor and building up a practice. So I think that determination is one of the things. Now, another thing that I always talk about, I talk about it to my staff and so on, is attention to detail. I'm not a perfect person by any means, and I don't regard myself even as an expert. I think I'm more of a jack of all trades. But definitely in Africa, we must, have our hand on the wheel. We must know what's going on, and we must check and double check. And we can't make assumptions about things. And there's too much cutting corners. People who I don't know, the sort of, I don't want to call it the get-rich-quick mentality. But, in the end, it's that we have to come back to checking and to detail and stuff like that. I've mentioned passion. I think that's important in what we do. Really, we should be passionate about what we do. And then I mentioned earlier that sometimes, I would say our lives can be in seasons. I just missed, there was a reunion for my year that graduated, a class of 76 or something. And I went to it 5 years ago, but it was in Northern Ireland. I couldn't go this time. But I was kind of imagining this group of now getting on older doctors getting up to retirement. The last time I went, it was interesting that 80% of my year sort of stayed where they were, just went through the system. Now, I know Africa's different, but this is how it is, and this is in Northern Ireland. And they're basically never really changed. When I say they never changed, they just kept in that system as a GP or specialist or whatever. And now, 35 years later, they're coming up to retirement. And I think that sometimes you do have to be prepared to make paradigm shifts. You do have to be prepared to say, I'm prepared to start again. Now, I don't mean chopping and changing, but I mean that you can take what you've been doing and you can build on it, but you don't mind starting again at the bottom. I mean, Lamin he was in West Africa, very successful. He has to come here to Uganda, that place that had a terrible reputation. Standard Chartered, I remember at that time, had some issues with a few bad debts. But you have to be prepared to take those decisions. And I think it's important. It's important sometimes that we are humble enough or whatever to take such decisions. And then lastly, I think, it's not all about work. We are very relational. I mean, one of the things, we're social animals. And I think that if we don't have good relations, if we don't enjoy the relationships we have at work and in what we're doing, we don't have much. Because in the end of the day, it's the relationships that will mark our lives, it's the people who we know and so on.
Thank you very much. But just to follow quickly, I think your trajectory in career is very interesting. First, you come from Ireland to Uganda. All right? Huge transition. Then you started a clinic. Of course, as you put it, you are your own product initially, your own service. But now I imagine as your medical service organization grows, you had to at some point shift from being a doctor to being a manager. Is that correct? How did you manage those transitions?
I think you have to manage. You have to learn. Life is a learning curve, and definitely you get a syndrome. I see it all the time in Uganda, where someone can grow in a business to a certain extent. So they can grow the business as long as they're at the center of it and controlling it. Even there's some very large businesses in Uganda which are run, but they're run by one person. I think we know, some are very successful. Others often stay small because they can't get beyond that point. But if you're going to grow as a business, you have to be able to go through those changes. For me, I think I started off as my own service, as my own product. Then it got to that stage where I employed 150 or those sort of numbers of people, and then I was the kind of spider at the center of the web, running around doing everything. But then, when it gets to the point where you're employing 500, 600, 700 people, you must get systems, you must get corporate, and then you get to the level where you have to have a governance and a board and stuff. You have to make the changes, and I think that there are many people. It's actually quite a transition. Like, I'm now the chairman. Now, that doesn't mean I'm not involved in my group. I'm definitely involved, but I have a chief executive, and I don't breathe down his neck. I can't be along. The thing that will kill a corporate organization is when the founder or the chairman won't give the chief executive room to breathe and won't let him get on with it. So if you're going to make those changes, and I think it's interesting in Uganda, there's a lot of businesses that don't actually make such changes. And what I want is to develop our group into a place where it's corporate, it has other shareholders, and it is undisplaceable, and in that sense that it goes on beyond me, and it doesn't have to be Ian Clarke. We either change or we die, and as far as those things are concerned. But there's a lot of it's difficult because a lot of things you could have looked after yourself, and so now you can't, and you've got to accept that growth and that evolvement. But anyway,
thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Manjang.
All right, thank you. My personal journey, I've actually been a CEO before. I was CEO of Gambia International Airlines at the very old age of 30. So I was quite young when I became CEO, and I remember that was very, very challenging because I came without any airline experience, and I had to intervene at a stage when the airline was almost on the verge of bankruptcy, much like I think Uganda Airlines or whatever, state-owned airline. But then, I managed to, with my team, of course, managed to turn it around, and it became a profitable airline. That was before I joined the bank. And then, of course, I went to Sierra Leone, had some challenges there, but again, the bank did well. And of course, in Uganda, in fact, we just had a strategy meeting this morning. So the whole day, of course, I've got some of my team members here. The whole day was spent actually in a strategy session looking at the bank's performance to date and what the next 5 years will portend for the bank. As a leader, I've got 4 essential qualities or values which I think are indispensable. The first one, it goes without saying, is vision. What exactly do you want? What do you want to achieve? What's your goal? And that comes with passion, all right? It's really what drives you, what really makes you wake up in the morning, just like Dr. Clarke's vision of, setting up something in Kampala and getting that vision realized. I think I've never seen a leader that doesn't have vision, that doesn't have passion for something that can, galvanize people around him. Now, the second very indispensable quality to me is to care for people. I think Doctor mentioned that, relationships, all right? Essentially, leadership means you have followers, all right? You are there in front or whatever, but you've got people behind you. And it's important that you care for those people. I think one of the reasons why a lot of leaders fail is because they think of themselves first, and then they think of their followers second. It should be the other way around. You should think of your followers first. What's in their interest, and how do you fight for them? How do you make sure that they succeed? Then what happens is you now have the reverse effect. All your followers also would put your interests first as a leader. Now, can you imagine the power of that, of having people wanting you to succeed and making sure that they are rooting for you? So that is the key. That is a key that I think is missing in many leaders. They think of themselves first, and they sort of start thinking of other people last. Then the other indispensable quality to me is delivery of results. All said and done, the reason why people select you to be the leader is because they believe that you can achieve the goals, the aspirations that they have. So you have to deliver results. Now, excuses, giving excuses, we couldn't do this because of A, B, C, D, that can only take you so far. At the end of the day, the results have to speak for themselves. And last but not the least is integrity. Now that is where a lot of leaders, the ones that have failed miserably, this is where they have fallen short. If you look at a company like Enron, for instance, it was run by some of the most brilliant people, Jeff Skilling and Kenneth Lay and all those people, Harvard Business School, all the right ingredients. Very passionate. They had belief in Enron, created a company from virtually nothing into one of the biggest companies in America. Clearly, I think they cared for their people, but I really don't believe that much. Although they gave stock options and so on to their people. They delivered results, although those results were forged. But the real reason why they failed miserably was lack of integrity. And I think if as a leader, people cannot trust you, because at the end of the day, people are entrusting their future in your hands. If people cannot trust you, if your word cannot be trusted, I think you really, really are going to fail very, very badly. So to me, those are, I would say, indispensable. You can, if you succeed in some of them, then you can only go so far. But if you succeed in all of them, I think you will be an outstanding leader. So have vision, care for people, deliver results, and have integrity.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. But I'm going to have to get back to you on this. I believe everybody seated here tonight probably has faced a challenge with integrity. You are trying to do business and you are cornered, in the sense that if you don't play along, you lose. You play along, you score 0 on integrity. Now, I want to bring it back to you, Mr. Manjang. Have you ever faced a situation where you had to make a very difficult choice on integrity? And I'd like you to share it with the audience in, as much detail as possible.
All right. I mean, I think as a business leader, you always have those challenges. In the bank, for instance, Standard Chartered Bank, we have a mantra which says that we don't compromise compliance for revenue. Simple. When it comes to compliance, when it comes to following laws, irrespective of whether there is a huge amount of money to be made, the rule is you don't compromise compliance for revenue.
Well, let's hear it from the audience. Questions, comments on this? May I see some hands up?
My name is Innocent Wemesa, working with Standard Chartered Bank. One, I think for the forum that is today, we should have called it Meet the CEO of Today and Tomorrow, because I believe there are CEOs here for tomorrow as well. Probably it could be a consideration for next year. But I will just go to Dr. Ian Clarke, running through his experiences and where he is today. He did say that he's been a jack of all trades, and we do appreciate. But along the discussions, we have been talking about the issue of passion. If you're to exceed, you have to have the passion and the determination. Now, looking at the fact that you're a jack of all trades, you end up touching everything that there is, and you might end up losing focus, which at the end of the day may not actually get you to where you want to be. So when I look at where he is today, he's excelled. And then also looking at the fact that he says he's been a jack of all trades, I find that there's some bit of friction in terms of being a jack of trades and the fact that he has achieved. I mean, if we end up doing all that, I believe we might not get where we want to be. Thank you.
My name is Emmanuel Kasule. I work for Orange, Uganda. Lamin talked about compliance versus revenue. There are those instances when you go to the boardroom and you face the board of directors, and they are quite very keen on revenue. They're not going to listen to your compliance stories. How do you react to stories like that? I mean, that also, by extension, goes to the vision. Sometimes you have a very, very nice, colorful vision, which the board of directors will not buy. How do you deal with that? And other than just telling me about it being diplomatic and tactful, what else do you really dig up from within you to convince them that this is the thing that we have to go with? Thank you.
My name is Rugendo. I am the director of the Red Paper. my question to Dr. Ian Busulwa. How do you're talking about personal excellence and personal development. How important is it to balance between family, work, meetings, a good sleep, and a good health regime? How important is it for a CEO like myself? Lamin, I believe that there's a cliche that personal development and excellence goes with books and a good education. How important is it on your journey to becoming that great CEO? Yeah, education, yeah, good education, yeah. Thank you.
So health balance, how do you utilize that to achieve excellence? And of course, where is the role for books? So may I ask, Mr. Manjang to start?
All right, thank you very much. I think the question for me was the issue of compliance versus revenue, and what happens if the board of directors doesn't want to hear about compliance. I think the board of directors that doesn't want to hear about compliance is a very incompetent board. I was actually, on last Friday, there was a lecture given by Professor Waswa Balunywa, and I was actually a discussant. And the issue of board audit committees and how they are gatekeepers to good governance came up. It's the role of the board of directors to be actually a guardian for good governance and making sure that the organization, the management team, is actually, following good practice. So the board that tells you that, by not being compliant, that's actually encouraged so that you can make more revenue, is actually a very incompetent board, and I must say some of those board directors may end up in jail if they are not too careful. The second question for me was, about the vision. What if the board doesn't buy the vision? Well, I think the vision obviously is developed by the management team, and then it has to be endorsed by the board. The board, endorses the strategy of the organization. Again, I would be very surprised if a well thought out vision that really articulates what the organization stands for is rejected by the board. I mean, that would be a very, very incompetent board. I can share with you, for instance, the vision of Standard Chartered Bank. Our vision is to be the world's best international bank, leading the way in Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. Now, every member of staff of Standard Chartered Bank knows this, and every member of staff buys into this. And that explains, somebody might ask you a question, why is it that I don't see Standard Chartered Bank in the UK, for instance? We don't have a branch network in the UK, or we are not in, in France or Germany or wherever. We are very clear in that vision or that mission statement that our focus will be Africa, Asia, Middle East. So this is what a vision is. It defines who you are, what you stand for, what the organization stands for. And again, I think I would be very surprised a board that doesn't buy into that. Now, the last question was about how does good education play a path in terms of getting personal development and excellence. I think it's very, very critical. I think being well educated, having the right qualification, gives you the capacity, the tools. Although I think we should be very, very careful not to overrate education. One of the tendencies that I see is people believe that the certificate, the paper qualification that you have, that is what education is. It's not. It's just a process that you go through to get that, but what do you become as a result of that? That is really what the education should do for you. It's that capacity to think, that capacity to be mature in your outlook and to contribute positively. I have a sense that some people tend to go through, you get this degree, then you add that degree, then you add that certificate, then you add that degree. But at the end of the day, what does it translate into? Are you effective? Are you productive? So you can have a string of degrees, but if you're not effective, if you're not productive, then really it doesn't mean much. So I think education is important, yes, but let's not get carried away with, big certificates or big titles. It's really what does it translate into in terms of your own personal growth and development.
Thank you very much, Dr. Clarke.
I had a question from Innocent about being a jack of all trades and how that fits with, you know, they say jack of all trades, master of none. And how does that fit with actually having developed an organization? Most people's career pathway, they usually start, they get an education and they start in some sort of specialist field, such as a lawyer, an accountant, or whatever, in my case, a doctor. Generally speaking, I have to say, doctors are very poor managers, as a generalization. Actually, my fellow doctors would admit that. But you start with that specialist, you get your education, you have your training in your particular field. Now, if you're going to then develop or be part of an organization, you have to then become more generalist. There's no point in, you know, that I understand everything about arterial sclerosis, but I don't understand anything about cash flows or about, you know, strategic plans or, you know, capital ratios or, you know, the financial stuff. So in order to be good, you have to actually learn. You have to learn the different aspects of the organization. You're not going to rise, you know, because I think that the chief executive has to be a good generalist. And they may have come often in these corporate organizations, they've come from a finance background or sometimes a legal background, but people have come from an engineering background. If you look at, you know, you look at a lot of the organizations, people start off as specialists and then they move into the more general stuff. So, you know, it's up to us to educate ourselves as we move through life. And it's you know, it's the school of hard knocks. I think I gain my knowledge of things by just being a person who has an inquiring mind. I have an inquiring mind. I say that I wrote a book recently, which you can get in Aristoc. I should advertise my book here. It's called How Deep Is This Pothole? Okay, fixation on potholes. But I say in that
there's
book,
a red card for that.
Sorry?
There's a red card for that, for advertising your book.
Oh, sorry. Okay, fine. Okay, David, see me later. But I say in that book, I started off as a chicken farmer, because that's when I was a boy. That's what I did. But you know, every bit of experience that we gain in life allows us to build. Say, you know, and it's not necessarily a piece of paper. Yes, pieces of paper. I did a master's in public health. I did a degree in medicine. And then the other thing to understand as a generalist, you know, as the sort of jack of all, is what you don't know. You know, and don't beat yourself up on it. I'm not a techie person. I know how to, my keyboard skills are okay, but you know, beyond that I can't do much. But I've got people that can do that for me. Yeah, sorry. The other question was about the balance between family, work, sleep, health, and so on and so forth. I think our lives must have a rhythm. If we don't have a rhythm in our lives, we'll stress out and we'll be no use to anybody. And no matter how pressured you are, you must know how to balance. And you must know what helps you unwind and you must stay healthy. I mean, I was seeing people are dying too early in Uganda, and they're not dying from infectious diseases. They're dying from non-infectious diseases such as strokes. You know, you hear people who have high blood pressure, diabetes, and that combination, and then in their 50s or 60s, then you know they die due to it's blood vessel disease, and that's because of an unhealthy lifestyle. So we need to look after our health, and the best thing we can do is actually exercise. Have some regular form of exercise that you do, particularly as you get older. You know, I didn't really start to exercise until I was in my 30s, but now, you know, I struggle. I'll never be. I jog, and I don't do it enough, but like I still keep up. I still do it. So I think we do need this. We need this balance, you know. And if we don't have a work-life balance, we'll get stressed out, and then we'll not be. Our attitude to our work and everything goes down. Everything becomes a grind, you know. So it's not good.